Well, welcome everyone. We are back here with some digital workplace reviews. I'm here with my favorite people to talk tech with. We have Vijay Anand from the Startup Center and Vonday from Radical Change. Vijay, how are you today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, always great to have you. And Vonda, what's new in your world?
Oh, I'm just super excited to be back from traveling and dig into some more products and talk about them.
Cool. Well, I'm also excited. I think last time was when we kind of got deep into defining what a digital workplace was in all of our views, which was good to do. So from my viewpoint, again, you all can chime in as well. But when we're talking about what a digital workplace is from a technology standpoint, we're talking about the tool and kind of like that central tool. If you move the office or you move work out of the office, what becomes that core? What becomes that center, the nucleus around everything? So you got to have something that's going to be able to do very unstructured chat type. Hey, let's talk together. If that's something that's going to be a little bit more semi-structured projects that will be able to handle very flexible type work. And then you have to have something that's going to be for the more that process automation, something you can hand off onto the computer side of things for them to take care of. And I mean, there's a lot of different tools. Most tools come at that from one strength. They do one of those things really well and try to add on features to the other one is what we found. But that's my general intro. Anything you guys want to add into that?
So, from my standpoint, I agree with you. And then what I do is, I expand it because I always think when I think digital, I still think people. So, even though, right, we're talking about how we work together in a digital age in a digital format, to me, the other component of that digital workplace is ensuring that the people and the culture are able to align right to whatever those tools are. So it's a combination. And I think one of the things that we've uncovered in our conversations too is it's really around the organization and the leader and where they're starting from and how well they know their team in relationship to the culture.
Yep, I would agree with that too. Vijay, what about you? How would you add on to that?
No, I think you covered quite well. The thing that I often keep thinking about when it comes to digital workplaces is that organizational leadership types are also quite varying based on geography. For example, the way that companies are run and decisions are made and work is done is very different in, say, Japan versus Germany versus US. And a good digital workplace is supposed to cut through all of those things, ideally speaking. But yeah, I guess we don't live in an ideal world. So I think I'm quite curious to see how some of these tools basically tackle all those challenges.
Yeah, great. Well, let's jump into today's topic. We are looking at Swit. So let me share my screen here. Swit comes to us from Korea, I believe, is where they're based. So they are a great tool to look at for that. Here's their website, OS for the Future of Work. You see this phrase sometimes. People say, hey, you need a new work OS. So your entire operating system that comes around. Talking about being purpose-built, scalability, interoperability, functionality, employee productivity. So, there's a lot of things it's trying to say it's going to do, focusing on remote work, more organized stuff. So I came across this tool maybe 2-3 years ago. It was pretty basic at the time, but looked promising. So it was nice to revisit it and see what it actually featured. So just take a quick look. We always come back to pricing at the end. So it tends to be pretty similar to other ones where they have a free model that's there. And really the only reason you're going to upgrade is when you need extra storage, more attachment type thing, and specifically the projects. You can do 5 projects for free, so it's kind of a limited there. So I think most companies that are growing would assume that this is just kind of a trial type thing, and then you're going to move over here at least to the $9 version. Okay, let's jump into it.
Well, one thing to the pricing that I did notice is that if you want to use the mobile app, it's $2 to download it.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, because my team. So what I've been doing is practicing, doing these reviews with my team, right, to actually see, what they see on their end. And since they're both in the Philippines, like, it's really good to be able to see, what the differences are. So that was the first thing on pricing. So even though it says free, right, I was imagining if a developer or somebody else, people like to use their mobile devices, right? And even though $2 doesn't seem cost prohibitive, but it still could be.
Yeah, and $2 if you're talking 50, 100, 250 employees, it becomes pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Vijay, before as we just look at the landing pages or the promises it's trying to make? Anything you notice?
I'm surprised that this product was actually launched 2 years ago, and I think I'm just on their release logs and stuff like that, and they're saying that they're at version 4.0, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm on their email list. He sends out a lot of stuff all the time. The CEO does. So it seems to be actively working on. So let's see what they got. So essentially, Swit is two things. It's these two things on the side. You got your channels and you have your projects. So when you look at it all together, this is what it is. It's this kind of channels being discussions, both in terms of direct message chats, channels for teams that are up here, and then you have these projects. And within the projects, you can have different views, but essentially it's just your typical Kanban board that can be a status, bucket, team, timeline. So they're trying to build out different project management type tools that are there to be able to see things. So that's the basics of what Swit is. It is chat plus some channels plus some project management. What do you guys think? Is that a pretty fair assessment?
Yeah, I think it actually has the beginnings of what could essentially be a work hub. Yeah, but it's quite some distance away from being a work OS.
I agree with that. And when my team and I were using it and talking through it, the key things that we were thinking through was adding this in if you're already using, let's say, Google Workspace and Slack, right? Again, and Trello, right? Because those are the three things we use the most, right? So adding this just for chat, and project management, it just didn't seem like something else to add on. But again, right, we've had some conversations around where teams are in their process and what their goals are. So I think that's also, an important part of consideration, right, is where that particular team is that is considering a product like this one.
Yeah, I found that this tool it seems like it would be helpful if you're not using anything and you are scared, or maybe you used Slack in the past with a different project or a different team, and you're like, well, that's going to be too messy. I want something that I can streamline things a little bit easier with. Then maybe you say, I just want a fresh start. Let me try with something new, something clean. This seems like it would work for a while. You're definitely going to hit some roadblocks into how big you can take things, how many projects, how many teams can be there. I don't know, Vijay, for smaller startups that are coming to something fresh, do you think this might work?
It could, but they're gonna find themselves, because the main feature or the main value proposition here seems to be project management. So most of the startups seem to be leaning either towards Trello or Asana. So I don't know how they're going to actually fight with them. And I know that there have been a couple of conversations that need, especially with freelancers, as to why they prefer Asana over some of these other things. They have a really, really steep and formidable stake in terms of project management, and they have a fairly loyal base there. Is this really going to move people away out of that? I think it's going to be quite difficult.
Yeah, it'll definitely be hard to drive somebody into this again, unless they were burnt out on something before. Be like, man, we used to use Trello. There were so many boards. It was so crazy. Just give me something to start over with that looks clean. I mean, the design looks pretty clean here, but otherwise it's lacking in a lot of things. Vonda, you said you guys used some direct message, chat, and channel features here.
Yeah, and we attached a couple of links and files, right? But because we're already on Google Workspace, it's, and using Slack, it's still like, okay, where would this fit in? But let's go back to talking about a new team, right? Onboarding, or somebody who says, okay, hey, we have a mess going on, and let's try to think about something new. I think, and we've talked about this before, is really important to find out from the team, right? From the people, like what is the pain point that they may have? Because if we think about it from the standpoint is it a pain point for like the CIO, right, or the founder, because it's like a tech debt situation and you feel like your files are everywhere, chat is everywhere, and project is everywhere, and you have a mess and you don't know what to do? Or are your teams, maybe you got a dev team over here that is like saying, hey, we just are confused and we can't get it together. So I think that understanding the crux of the pain point at the very beginning is a way that I think, that Swit and all of these apps, right, can think about how to have that conversation with anybody who's going to be a potential customer. Because we try to figure out how we would be able to use it. And I even thought about, so, when I hire like a head of product that's going to be, working with the developers and all of that, I even thought, well, would they say, hey, Vonda, we think we need a new tool, but if they're using Git and everybody else is already using Slack, you know what I mean? And we have Trello to track projects. I'm still trying to understand how Swit can address a specific issue, concern, or problem.
Yeah, they're not targeting a specific use case. So it's just kind of teams in general. I think that's a challenge for a very generic tool like this that's trying to make a dent in the world. These channels, this part's a little bit interesting in the fact they call this ideation. The only thing I found about ideation is it's just like a channel board, or it's more asynchronous. And then you have this chat feature over here, which is just more for quick conversations. You're supposing to be more synchronous conversations that'll be there. So I guess this is like you're thinking fast, thinking slow type thing. But it's hard to see exactly what's coming over here. This converting chats into tasks is, I think, a great idea, but it doesn't really offer a lot. It just means that it's basically a shortcut to add something to a project board, which is lacking in some other tools, but overall wasn't a wow factor for me.
Yeah, I think this is a great experiment in contextual collaboration. So they're doing a lot of things that Google ideally should be having. Like, for example, Google still doesn't have a project management tool, right? Which is very surprising considering the range of things that they do. I would have thought that, like, even if they're doing, I don't think they need to have a feature-rich product. Even if they were doing a very few features, but if they was very well thought through and if the features were deep, I think it would have a lot of merit. But a lot of the features here are still quite, like, for example, ideation, like you said. If somebody actually posts ideas, for example, is there a way to vote, for example? Once that whole discussion has happened, can you actually summarize them? Because we still don't have a way to effectively do online meetings for, in the digital workplace, for example. I would have loved to see some of those things. I honestly think this is still quite a scaled back version of Slack. It is a little bit purpose built compared to Slack, which is a lot more open ended and, can be whatever you want. This is purpose built, but I think in the startup world, it's probably an MVP rather than a full-fledged product. When I looked at the pricing, I was like, okay, so they compare themselves with Slack in terms of pricing, and I thought that was quite bold.
Yep, for sure. Vonda, what do you feel like is what is there a standout feature here that's going to bring people in?
So I'm looking at the key things, And I don't see a like standout that would make you like, yes, we need to like, yeah, I want to get on it and use it right away. You know, the one thing that I think the one thing that I think adds to some uniqueness is if you have a work team that really is used to working in an office together, because of that ability to have that, you know, lean over to the cubicle, you know, beside or call out, hey, that it kind of gives me a feel of like being in an office with a team where you could, you know, chat and ask questions and that. So I think that if it's a team that maybe is struggling to convert to actually like a digital workplace where you have that hub and you have that culture interconnectedness, this to me is more of what people who are used to working in an office would be familiar with. So maybe it's kind of like a gateway to a real digital workplace, right? Where you would be doing that, because that is one thing. But other than that, you know, those other features, like we talked about, you know, even like the brainstorming and those other things, you can do all of those in Trello. You can do that in Slack. You can do that, you know, in other things. But I think it would be neat for teams who prefer that co-location and that, you know, persistent, you know, ability to just chat and talk.
I can see it as a like training wheels type thing. If a company is doing distributed work for the first time, and maybe something like we looked at ClickUp before. That's a big jump to jump into something like that. That's like full out project management, a lot of stuff. It would overwhelm, I think, most people who aren't used to this kind of work. Swit is not overwhelming. It's pretty clear and easy, I would say. So I could see a use case maybe for teams that are in that, like the people that are working there are just not used to tools. They don't like to see a lot of flashy stuff around. They get overwhelmed with other things. This can be something where if you use it, maybe it's going to work. If it's enough for you, great, you know, fantastic. But if it ends up being, oh, this was great, but now we know we need more about this, or we need like a wiki feature over here. So it's not just chat that's going on, but I want to be able to search things that are more permanent or something like that. And then maybe Swit grows up and adds a lot of these features, or maybe you need to search for a new tool after that.
Yeah, this is interesting on their website. If you go to their main site and under more, they basically have Swit Education. And when you click on it, it kind of says that if you are registered in any of these schools below, then you can kind of get this for free. And they're kind of positioning this as a learning platform, which maybe they're pivoting along the way to kind of see that this could be like a interaction space for online learning and things like that. In that case, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's where they're moving towards.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And I did click on some of these things and was clicking around, and I was concerned, not concerned, but just wondering like, okay, if you are saying, hey, you know, you could use this, you know, product for free if you go to one of these schools, is it just for, like, would you usually, would a student or a group of students working on a project together, would they use this as opposed to setting up a Slack channel? And I just don't think they would.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
This was a funny feature I found. You can set up the chat
Yes, the
box.
chat bots.
You guys, so what happens is you give it a phrase, and I said something like, if somebody types this, then this is what you want to be. So this is very much like a control mechanism from the whoever's running it that says, yeah, this is, we don't want people to, we want them always to use Google Meet. It's pretty basic, but it's kind of funny, I guess.
You know, but I think this is a feature that they used to use in IRC channels quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you keep getting the same questions over and over again. Like, for example, if this was an education scenario and if there was a course running, and if people keep asking, hey, what is the guideline for submitting that paper, for example? I would just want to basically set a standard response to it so that, I don't have to keep dealing with it over and over.
Yeah.
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 It makes sense from that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I could see a situation where it's like a classroom where everybody is coming in with different levels of expectation, that they're only going to be together for a semester. They just need a clear, clean place where they can put stuff. And then maybe you could even, like, different teams, like small teams, could put together little projects together. You're not going to be using it forever. It's not overwhelming. It could be cool for that.
And maybe the way to think about it, right, to that point is back to the conversation around the use case. Is it a team that's going to be temporary, right? Or, right, versus an organization that's starting small, that's growing like ours, right? Like, so my team is not going to be temporary, even though we may have shorter term projects, right, that have a, end date, right, which is a definition, right, which is a definition of a project. So maybe that's a way to kind of think about it too, from a use case standpoint. Is this going to be a one and done type of project, or are you looking to have something that you want to onboard to, as part of your digital workplace?
Yep.
Whether you're talking about the hub, or additional tools.
Yeah. I would also say that, like, when you talk about tools like Slack, I have noticed that for a lot of people who are comfortable with tech, Slack is kind of like, makes sense. They're comfortable using it. But for a lot of non-tech folks, Slack is just overwhelming. They it just looks like looking at an error log of, random things going on. And it's just too verbose. It's a fire hose of information for a lot of people. So I think I'm just looking at the kind of universities that are signing up here, and it does look like, they're looking at art universities and stuff like that. So maybe there is a use case here for that, which is a very simplified version, because the kind of integrations that Slack has with all the tools that you have out there with your Git repositories and your help desks and things like that, you're not going to get that here. But maybe this is a simplified version for, people who are not that tech savvy but still want to collaborate meaningfully.
Yep. Oh, let's see what else we got. I like this setting yourself away and active. That's missing in a lot of other products. It's just basic stuff that I like that it has it. Notification preferences are always going to be good. So I don't know. It's a solid product, and the more we talk about it, the more I feel like this is what I might recommend my parents to get on. Like, if I realize, look, you guys need something, but I'm not going to send you something super complex. Just use this. It'll be good enough for you. What you
to
need.
Plan your vacation.
Plan your vacation, yeah, exactly. If your family's getting together doing something, you just want something clean, and you don't want the chaos of Slack or something like that. This could be a nice thing for that. I'm not sure if they're going to appreciate us saying this is. That's the.
Would they pay $2 for the app?
8 exactly. Would they pay $2 for the app? Because if not, then right. Yeah, it's so interesting. I think about I did a Slack enterprise onboarding for a company, and I remember when I was in the first Slack demo, I was in love with that thing. I was like, because it was so ADD, which is like so me, right? It's like you can do all of these things. I had a call this morning with my development team, and he was like, when are you going to do your 3 things? And I was like, I am going to do them today. I said, I have one more call and then I'm more focused. Right. So so if I think about the way I work and the way a lot of us work, right? Somebody can ping you something in Slack, right? And it triggers something in you. Plus you have any links and all of that other stuff, right? And then the Slack bot will ask you, do you want to make this an appointment? Do you want to do that? And so it's just like it's ADD-ish, right? But it's very like there and in your face. So to your point, this is a scaled and slimmed down way that somebody who can deal with all of the fire hose of a Slack, whereas I love Slack because you can make it work the way you want it to. You don't have to have everything attacking you, right? You can set up a bunch of reminders. So not to take this into a Slack review, but
This is
Yeah.
almost the anti-Slack. I feel like Twist is the anti-Slack, which we can look at someday. But it's getting close.
This is, I think, if they are positioning themselves, and from what I can see on their website, I think in another 6 months they're going to reposition themselves as the OS for education, online courses or something like that. I have a feeling they're pivoting very fast towards that. And if that is the way that they're moving, then the $2 per app makes a lot of sense, because the universities, I think the in some sense the marketing strategy is smart, because they're essentially saying that if you want to log in from the web, everything is free because your university is paying for it. But if you want the convenience of the app as a student, you pay the $2 and get it. I think it makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I think in a way it's also very smart. But like Wanda said, nobody's going to do this voluntarily. If the professor basically essentially says that this is where all the conversations are going to happen, people are grudgingly going to sign up for it. But after that course is over for the semester, I think they're probably going to charge.
Yeah, I would agree. And this could get very complicated too. Like if you're talking about an entire university, it's way too much. Like I could see you could have channels up to about 10 channels at the most before it gets a little like, whoa, I don't like this anymore. And so again, you like one professor or one team manager leading a few different teams or something like that they just want everything on here would work fine for a while.
Yeah.
Well, good. I think we have looked at it. I feel like I understand Swit more, at least how I'd like to use it after this chat. Anyone else have a kind of final thought on it before we close down?
I mean, I think that Swit, like these other tools, right? I think the thing that stands out for me is, it's really around their positioning of the use case, right? Because now, Vijay, as you're talking about what you're kind of like the 6-month, projection or outcome, I could totally see it for that, right? For projects that you'll get in one time. So that makes a really good, that's a really good value proposition. But when companies, put their products out here into the environment, right, to the atmosphere, you have to tell people this is who it's for. This is who would benefit. And I think when we have these conversations, because we all, work differently, right, and we have our 3 businesses and our companies, we come to it, right, based on what we've tried and practiced. And then once we talk and hear each other, then it's easier to understand how the tools could really benefit. And so I think these conversations are really good because it pulls that out. But I would not have thought of some of these other things had it not been for this part of the conversation, because it's just like all of us, right? When we're in our day-to-day jobs, we're thinking our business, our company, our products and services that we're bringing and how these tools work. But then once we start communicating with each other and understanding, okay, this is how you see it, this is how I see it, then I think this is how this comes out. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Highly valuable.
Neil, one of the interesting features that I think probably gets hidden away is on the farmost right-hand corner. I think they have this panel view kind of a thing. And when you move your cursor over it, like the integration they've done with Gmail and Google Drive is actually quite impressive.
Over here, you said?
On the right.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that you can actually answer emails from inside here, you can connect your docs and all those things. But that button easily could be missed. So they should probably work on their UI a little bit, but that integration is done quite nicely. Nice.
Yeah, I feel like nothing is sloppy about this, which is nice.
Yeah.
It seems like a pretty well done. It's not very buggy. Things seem to be so. What they've done well. It's just it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. If they're
apart from the ideation thing, I think the ideation thing is kind of weird there, but. Yeah, they haven't thought through that yet. I think it's not fully fleshed out, but all the other aspects seem quite fleshed out.
Yeah. Cool. Well, excellent. always a pleasure to look at this stuff with you guys and just you get a new perspective. Like Vonday was saying, like you don't see all these things on your own. So it's great to look at these. We look forward to doing the next round with you guys. Thanks a lot for jumping on to this review, and we'll chat again soon.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Take care. Talk to you soon.